Remember, this section was about components. It was about understanding the most important concept of React, that you build user interfaces by building and combining components. And for that, we had a look at the React core syntax and JSX. We of course had a very detailed look at building and using and working with components and props. And that already leads to the last part, data. We learned how to share data across components through that props concept. Now maybe you already noticed one important thing. With all these components which we are building, in the end, we're just splitting up our code across multiple files and building blocks, so that if we want to have more than one expense item, we can just use our custom expense item component multiple times, instead of repeating all that code multiple times. That's the idea behind components. In the end, what ends up on the screen are just default HTML elements though. If you inspect your page with the developer tools, here in the Chrome developer tools with the Elements tab, you will notice that you don't see your custom components here. There is no card or expense item component. You just see divs and h2 elements and so on. And that is how the web works and how React works. These custom components are not really HTML elements which end up on the screen. You just use them in your code, in your React code, in your JSX code. What ends up on the screen are just the HTML elements, because ultimately every custom component you build either uses these built-in HTML elements, or it uses another component which at some point, if you drill into your components deeply enough, will end up using these built-in elements. And that's an important takeaway and something important to keep in mind. Now, the application we built thus far is great because we had the chance of learning about components and props with it. And these are two of the most important concepts you gotta know when working with React. I'm not sure if I mentioned it already. But of course, this application, as we built it thus far, also has a downside. In the end, it's still static. Yes, we have reusable components which can be configured with props, but ultimately we have this expenses array in the app.js file, and this array never changes. The data here is set in stone. It's still a static application in the end. Nothing is changing here. As a user, we have no chance of interacting with this application. And that's therefore what we're going to change in the next course section, when we're going to bring this to life and when we're going to learn about another concept called state. Now, before we go there though, I just got 3 other things which I want to cover here. The first thing, the first concept is JSX. I mentioned that we'll take a closer look at that, and we're going to do that in the next lecture. You could skip that lecture, but at some point you should have a look at it so that you understand what JSX really is under the hood and how it works. So I recommend that you don't skip it, even though you could do that if you're in a hurry. Now, the other 2 things I want to have a look at is how we organize our files and how we write our functions here. And therefore, let's dive into these concepts before we finish this module and move on to the next course section.